In this video, we're talking about why people are leaving Portugal.
Honest truths, feedback that we've received, questions that we've had about what's helped us to stay in Portugal for so long. It's a beautiful country. There's no doubt about that. We've said that on most of our videos. However, it's not for everyone. Getting up, moving halfway around the world in some cases requires a large amount of research, commitment, the right mindset, things that we've talked about before. But today we want to share with you some of the top reasons, and perhaps they can form part of your research process when looking into whether Portugal is right for you. Perhaps the best way to contextualize what we're going to talk about today is just having a look at the mindset that you would have to adopt in order to have the staying power to make Portugal work for you. Now, you need to fit somewhere between your comfort zone and your stress zone, nicely in the middle, to feel like you've really found your feet when you're here. A lot of people end up sadly in the stress zone, anxious, fearful, frustrated, overcome with way too many challenges and problems that they don't have the solutions for, and ultimately they end up quitting and moving on. So we're going to talk about not only some of the stressors that have existed for people, but perhaps some of the ways in which you can sit within the yellow zone and make it work for you and find your sense of purpose.
So before going into it, this is not necessarily our full view. We have analyzed a number of different sources to make this video.
Yeah.
We have spoken to hundreds of people through private messages and face-to-face to gather all this information, and we're just trying to tell our version of what we have heard and what we have experienced. So we're trying to create the broad view here.
Perhaps the single most biggest issue that we get feedback on is the sense of reality versus the expectation. So what people thought they were buying and what they experienced when they got here are at the polar opposite. So let's talk about some of those things.
We all know that Portugal isn't the richest country in Europe. It is known to have gone through different development stages. They were paying a big price in the last financial crisis in 2008. And the government did a bunch of different things to try to make that better. They made the NHR tax regime to reduce the taxes for anyone that haven't been here in the last 5 tax years, and for foreigners, of course. And they've made the visas a lot easier with the D7 visa and the golden visa and all of that. So there's been a huge demand as soon as COVID hit, as you probably have heard, and then lots of people come into a country that's not one of the richest, and that just creates a lot of pressure on the system, which makes everything expensive. So I will compare, and I've seen cases that where it would be cheaper to live in London than in Lisbon. So just bear that in mind when you're doing your budgets. It's not you're not coming here to save. Not necessarily. Of course, you can buy a cheap property for 100, 200,000 in central Portugal, but as a general rule, you're not coming here to save. You can take advantage of the tax rules, but also with the tax rules, there's a lot of bureaucracy at times, depending on how you're earning your money, which surprises many. That has a lot of setup, a lot of thought that needs to be put into it, a lot of advisors that needs to be consulted. It's not just I make X amount of money and I need to pay X amount in tax. It's a lot more complex, especially for us foreigners that don't make the money in Portugal. So there's a lot of opinions and rules and laws on that. So I definitely think that is one of the reasons that people get surprised.
Yeah, absolutely. One factor that many find frustrating is the super slow pace here. So for many it's beautiful because they come from the rat race, certainly us, where things have been way too fast, and it's been a nice change of pace for us. But for many, the adjustment is really very difficult because it permeates all aspects of life in Portugal, including when it comes to trying to get things done. So when you're trying to sort of conduct your day-to-day affairs, it's hugely bureaucratic, and things that might ordinarily only take one day, a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, can take weeks and weeks, months and months, and in some cases years and years, depending on what you're trying to do. So you really have to come with the right mindset. You can't come here thinking, right, I'm going to get things done the same day. Maybe you will if you're lucky. But often things do take time. And the other thing is often you can't just pick up the phone. There might be the language barrier, or they might not have the staff for what you're trying to achieve. So you have to be really patient. Sometimes emails might not be responded to, phone calls might not be picked up. There's a lot of tasks that need to be done in person.
So exactly like you're saying, we don't have the rat race here, but we do have the rat race here in a way that's it's all good and like there's a beautiful nature, beautiful beaches that's perfectly slow pace that you can enjoy.
Yeah.
But also when things that would have taken 15 minutes drags into a 4-hour task, it occupies your day differently and stresses you differently.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think if, as you were talking about before, if you're not prepared for it to take the 4 hours rather than the 15 minutes, that is when it can create the stress.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you need to be mentally prepared for it.
Yeah.
And just to add on what you said about emailing and phones not being picked up, these different institutions, tax officers, government officers, whatever you're trying to communicate with, they might not be used to communicate in that way. So they might be used to that people are coming up to them physically, or that they're using accountants or whatever. So they might not be used to being contacted in the way you're trying to attempt to contact them.
Yeah.
Therefore, there will be no service. It doesn't mean that it's bad service. It doesn't mean that they don't want to help you. It doesn't mean that it can't be easy. But and some people will go through things much easier than others.
Yeah, true.
But it just sometimes depends on the methods that you approach things, I would say.
Absolutely. And there's many things that just can't be done online. I mean, let's face it. So you have to be prepared to take time out of your day to go and attend appointments face to face and bring your suitcase worth of paperwork with you and make sure you have absolutely everything you need. Because the other thing is that depending on what you're trying to do, sometimes the rules can change depending on what office you're visiting. So you might find, you go to one government office and they say, right, you need these 3 things. You'll go to another government office and they'll tell you need 5 things, and you'll say, well, actually the other one told me I only need 3 things, and they'll say, well, you need 5, and that's the rule, and there's no working around it, and it is what it is, and you just have to accept it and comply. So
in Portugal, if we should use legal terms, there is law and then there's perception of law, and that very much changes. But that very much changes from council to council, we find. So some councils have one perception of the law, another council have another perception of the law, and they're very consistent with that. And if you're stuck within that one council, you just have to live with whatever they say, because they want more documents or less documents, or you come up with 5 documents because you've prepared them and they only want 2 of them, and there's those surprises because there's the perception of the law, that some of them have more or less checks of different things to perform those tasks. Another thing to bear in mind is that Portuguese people and the Portuguese community is very hardworking. You can't say that they are lazy, but they do have sometimes a different way of doing things, and they do have a different work schedule than what you might be used to. Like they have their 1, 2, 3 hour break in the middle of the day. They might be working from 8, 9 in the morning to like 7, 8 in the evening with a 2, 3 hour break in the middle. So sometimes if you're really pursuing something and it happens to be 1 p.m, you might want to try much later or try the following day, because otherwise you just get frustrated of it. So there is some logistical, cultural things that you just need to be aware of to increase your success in the process. Pursuing your dream in Portugal. Many people come here to pursue their dream, whatever that is, whether that's to build a house, renovate a house, build a business, whatever. And let's just try to touch a bit on that. So when you're coming here, you have to realize Portugal is a relatively big country, and there is only a few hubs where people are really, like the few main cities where a lot of expats would be at. So, for example, from end to end, I think it takes over 10 hours to drive from north to south Portugal. So even as a small country, logistically, you can still be far apart from things.
Yeah.
So when you're coming here, you might want to choose an area that can deliver on what you need from the country. So if you need other English-speaking expats that are building businesses, for example, your choices are very limited.
Yeah.
If you don't need that, then your choices are great. But it all depends. Like, focus on what do you need, and then figure out, is it in the area?
Absolutely.
Can the area deliver on that for me? Because one thing that you're coming on here is that if you're coming to Portugal to build, let's say, a large tech business or something, a startup or whatever, then building a actual business in Portugal can then be complex, because then you need local structure, social services payment, higher tax when you're hiring a workforce, which can be expensive.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of different things where Portugal isn't perfect if you are coming here to build or coming here to make money. So bear that in mind when you go out for the regular job offers that you might be able to find. There's some limiting facts where Portugal can't stand alone, where you need to have Portugal as maybe a part of your journey, but it just can't stand alone in your process of building whatever you're building. And then if you move over, because I don't know what you're coming here for, but and I don't know what your dream is, but let's say that you're coming here to renovate a house, as I see many in the Scandinavian communities that I'm following are coming here for. Then if you're buying a ruin or you're buying an old properties, you need to bear in mind that there's a lot of hidden pleasures within that journey. So you can have buildings that can be very hard to renovate. There's buildings that can be a big project to renovate. Also paperwork-wise with government, and find a workforce, constructions people and constructions material that can deliver for your dream. So you do need to have a great amount of patience with that. And you do need to team up with local people that can help you through that. Find local people that can help you within the construction space, for example, and team up with that. And you really have to try to immerse yourself into that local community, because those are the ones that's going to carry you through that journey.
Yeah.
So you're very heavily relying on that. So what I think I'm trying to say here is, in some countries, like maybe your home country, that's how I feel about it in Denmark, for example, where I'm from. I can stand alone and I can do a lot by myself, but here, if I want to get things done, I have to be okay with relying on other people to get it done.
Yeah.
Which again, just take a certain mindset to be ready for, because otherwise it might stress you out.
Yeah, that's it. Planning permission can take a long time to grant, so you could be sitting on your dream for years and be stalled. And in one case, actually, there was a couple who came here to build their dream home in Mafra, and they are living in a motorhome next to the foundation of the building.
Yeah.
They have been living in that motorhome for years, waiting for planning permission on their property, so they can look out of their motorhome and see the foundation of their dream.
Yeah.
But they're unable to move, and they've spent their life savings on this dream, and they're unable to move forward. So it's a sad situation.
And I think in that particular case, it's something about that the plot is sold as residential. The council now think it's agricultural, so for farming, and then you have different issues with that. And Portugal is not alone about that. I also know when we last applied for a building permission in Denmark for commercial property, that also took over a year.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're trying to say that all other countries are holy, but do just put it in your time plan. That's what we're trying to communicate here, that it will take some time, and it will create it. You have the language and a bit of culture on top of it, where you have to rely on other people. So it really means a lot that you find a good team of people that can help you, good architects,
Definitely.
good local people that know the council, that maybe have done it before, maybe find other expats that have been through a similar journey before that can help you shortcut this, because it can be a very lengthy process if you're not being advised properly, and if you spend your money before you're sure that you can actually do it. And when you are moving to a new country, this is not Portugal specific, it's just something I've learned over the years. You can't just over rely on one person. So just because say a real estate agent say you can do X, then double check it.
Yeah, for sure.
And this is not country specific. It's just that you need, when you are a guest in a new country, a new resident in a new country, you can't know things for certain, and you are essentially voting with your dollars here. So you need to be sure that you're not buying something that can't be reality. Another thing I think is very important to touch upon is when you go out of those communities like Porto and Lisbon with a lot of expats, and you go into some of the smaller cities or small remote areas, then you will find that there's mostly Portuguese people, of course, but it's that this is sort of the first wave of foreigners that are moving into it. So it's not like the UK, for example, or Denmark, where foreigners have been moving in for 30, 40 years, well, in high quantities.
Droves, yeah.
So that have sort of mixed up the cultures a bit, made it more multicultural, more areas than some. But in Portugal, this is sort of the first wave in. So you are coming into Portugal's monoculture, which is Portuguese. So you do have to sort of just bear in mind if that fits with your drive and your ambition and like what you enjoy, because otherwise you need to set yourself in areas where you just have access to more cultures. And this is not Portugal specific. You could say the same about Denmark in certain areas that is also very monocultural. So this is not shooting on the country. It's just something to bear in mind when you're choosing the location, that some areas are very much one culture, and it's hard to find your tribe outside of that culture if you don't gel with the culture.
Yeah. And talking about gelling with the culture, another thing that people find very difficult is finding their sense of community here, their tribe, people who they align with, who they have a shared sense of values and beliefs. And I think this is a really important one, and we touched upon that in our last video, and if you haven't seen that, check that out. It's really important to say that many people who enjoy Portugal do so for a finite period of time. So they come here maybe as a remote worker, or they come here to try the country out for a few years and then they leave. So it can be transient in some areas, particularly in the cities. So what you will find is it's more tricky to build those longer term, lifelong friendships, because people will come and people will go. So if you're planning, if this is your final stop and you're planning to be here long term, 10 years plus, then that's something to really think about. You know, a sense of feeling truly integrated also means that you need to learn the language, for example. You need to really understand the culture and feel comfortable with the culture.
Yeah, but you're completely right here that it is easy come, easy go. And we're seeing a generation of people that have moved to a new country for the first time, that have left their home country for the first time as a backdrop of COVID, as they had remote work. And so that's the first time they're trying a new country, and then they might just be jumping back or jumping onto something else. So there is a bit of that. That's definitely one category. And there's also a category of people that became remote workers under COVID and then moved to Portugal and then lost their job and can't get another one, and then they have to get the return ticket. So you have to sort of make sure that you're not one of those, because that can be certainly something that goes out in the stress category. When you least expect it, and when everything else starts to work out. And then it's also a good bit of just when a country like Portugal, it's probably one of the easiest in Europe to get a visa into. So you are going to get those that are not fully sure if they want to move into Europe, for example. And you're also going to have a bit of the IKEA effect. The IKEA effect is when you've spent 2 hours finding your furniture, spent 2 hours building it, carrying it up to third floor, then you have a bigger love for it. Like for some countries, when you have to wait 3, 4, 5 years, spend hundreds of thousands to get your visa, you automatically love it a bit more because it was hard to get. With Portugal making it very easy, then you're finding a lot of people that just don't have that level of commitment, that don't have the IKEA effect here. and I think we're seeing a big bit of that. So there's a lot of people that just have one foot in and then like, do I want it or don't I want it, and then step back out again. So there's definitely a lot of that. There's a lot of people that have told us, oh, now we're coming, now we're moving, now we're buying a house, and then 6, 12, 18 months later they've sold their house and moved on.
Yeah, that's surprising. There's definitely a number of people who we thought were
a good number, surprising number.
The long haul. And then actually, in some cases, you were due to have coffee with some people. So you actually had set up coffee dates, and then you go to kind of put the date in and lock it down, and they've gone.
There's scenarios where I agree that we would have coffee in like 3-4 weeks when more work calms down. We set a date, set a time, location, so on. And then when it gets to it and you just check in the same day, oh, I've moved.
So there is a bit of that. So we say this to say that, you really do need to find people who are going to have really committed, have got their feet truly on the ground here. And so you don't feel a sense of isolation and loss when people start moving away. And it's just a really important point, as we said in the other video, because it's a key anchor in making you feel comfortable and staying in that yellow zone that we've talked about.
And it's also to make sure that you are, if that's what you need, that you surround yourself with other people that are on the same journey as you, because the reason why people come here can be many different things. Some people like to live in the most remote bit of Portugal, living on the land. They grow everything and they put solar cells everywhere for all the electricity they use. Some people want to buy a farm and build their own winery. Some people want to build tech businesses. Some people want to come here with a digital nomad job or a remote job, and some people want to live in the cities and expat communities. Like, there's many different journeys. It's not just language that's the limitation. It's not just age group that's the limitation, but it's also just that you have that same journey that you want to go on. That can be a limitation when you're trying to set up your tribe. So it's not just that, okay, there's hundreds of this nationality in this location, I'll be fine. It's also that they might be on very different journeys than you are, so there's just less things in common.
So as we've said on many videos, the Portuguese people are so welcoming, warm and lovely, but as we've also said, are very hardworking, have their own families and things, priorities in their own lives. So some people have given us feedback that it is hard to make friends, and for some, very easy. But it's important it would be remiss of us not to mention that for some it is challenging, and it also depends a bit on your personality. If you're more introvert, it might be more challenging for you to strike up a conversation, especially if you don't feel confident or proficient in the language.
I also think that, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I also think that it's important to just bear in mind that there's different types of friendships. Some people have 5 friends that they spend all their time with, and other people have 500 friends that they spend 2 minutes with each. So it also depends on what kind of friendship that you're looking for. With a lower time commitment in the Portuguese nationalities, then you will find that they will be fine, they'll be friendly, they will be welcoming, but the deeper relationships will just be a little bit harder because of that.
Time. But that, you could say that with anywhere. It's not just.
Yes, but there's a logistic issue here. If you're coming with a normal remote job from the UK, for example, that you work day hours, you don't have 3 hours off in the middle of the day, and then your evening is ready at 5 or 6 or something, and then you're just not available at the same time.
That's true.
So that you can have a bit of a mismatch in
and I suppose
making
it depends on your philosophy, because like us, we came here and we were very clear that for the first couple of years we certainly want to be outside of an expat community. So when you've made that conscious decision, you also know that with that it's going to be more difficult when you don't know the language to develop those deeper friendships, those long-lasting friendships. Now we have, and it is possible. However, it does take a different kind of mindset and patience to be able to do that, versus going straight into an expat community like Cascais or Lisbon, or one of the more highly populated areas with foreigners, and you'll find that it's much easier to find people who you can gel with and much easier to build community. And many, we find, are doing it through Facebook groups, through shared interests. One of the things that I love in certainly countries that I visit is, for example, I'm into my fitness. You won't be able to tell at the moment. But for example, I've just finished my Zumba class, and there you meet like-minded people who are also into their fitness. So it's just a good place to meet people, be social. So find your hobbies, things that you like to do, go to clubs, be social, get out there. There's lots and lots of things. One thing to say, that not everything is super public. So often you'll find things here are not marketed super well, so you have to sort of dig and find things out, speak to people, look at groups. I'm hit by a lot of Facebook ads these days about things going on that I would have never have known had I have not been hit by that ad. But it's again that the people that, like the Portuguese people, might be receiving information about events differently than what you're used to. So Instagram there will be a lot if you're signing up to all the right people. But also Portugal just have more of a word of mouth marketing, I think. And that you just need to be aware of, because otherwise you're missing out on quite a bit. And then to touch on services in Portugal. Services in Portugal work slightly different than what we used to in the UK, for example. We don't have like a task rabbit where we can just get a handyman or a cleaner for tomorrow. It's not as well built out yet. It is in that way the development is definitely slower, and there's just not the same need for it as there is in the UK. Actually, it's quite funny. Can I just say something? So
just interrupt if you like.
I'm sorry, but the funny thing is, I just thought of something on Facebook, in the Facebook group. Sometimes somebody will say, do you know a cleaner in Lisbon, for example? I live in such and such an area, it's a 2-bedroom place, and the typical response is, why don't you do it yourself? So it's that kind of sort of
mentality that you get. And then also, because it doesn't really exist, then when you are asking for, like, let's say cleaning a 2-bedroom flat, then you might get quotes that are completely
wacky.
Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, and some of it is probably because they've never had that task before, so they don't know how to approach it, how to quote it. Because they're more used to like commercial cleaning of offices, cleaning of hotels, and not so much of what you are asking for necessarily. And then like it's just not because the demand isn't there, because the economy isn't in the level of the UK, for example. People just don't spend money on that in the same way. So it just doesn't exist. And then if we go into like more broad services like Amazon, we luckily have access to Amazon, which is the Spanish one, but it is no like British Amazon. There is a lot of things missing in the catalog, and what you will find is sometimes you can get it in a couple of days, and sometimes Amazon Prime takes 7 days to deliver. So there is just that to bear in mind, that because the infrastructure isn't in the country yet, then you are relying on another country's infrastructure that's just about to be built up.
And often a big issue for people is that the fact that they're missing their friends and family back home. And it's a big one for people. It's a huge move to get up and pack up your whole life and move to a new country. And often that feeling of really missing out, missing birthdays, holidays, celebrations can be very difficult, and for some just too difficult to deal with. And unfortunately they realize that they just can't do it. They it's a dream that they just couldn't make into a reality, and they end up going back home due to that. And obviously some of the frustrations that we've talked about in the video, it doesn't stand alone. It's often a cumulative effect of lots of frustration and things being very different, and culture shock, and then missing familiarity and everything they knew. And it can be a much tougher journey for some than others, and it's important that you really are ready for it. You've done your homework, you've come here and done a scouting trip, you understand what you're signing up for, and you understand all the pros and the cons, because there are lots of videos, there are lots of glossy YouTube videos that will show you the landscapes, that will show you the beaches and the food and the wine, and it can be very easy to get seduced with it. You know, like a handsome man, you just want to sort of get there and, get your, give up your whole life for this wonderful dream. But there are some hard realities here. We don't want to sugarcoat it. It's not easy. And we'd be lying if we're standing here and saying it's been easy for us. It hasn't been. However, we're not complainers, and we were prepared for it. So it just makes the navigation of the challenges easy for us, and it's not our first rodeo. So some of the challenges, we've lived in Spain before, for example, so we were used to that sort of amaña attitude, maña, or amaña here. We're used to sort of that laid back culture and the fact that some things take time. And so we feel like we came here, ready to embrace what the country had to offer.
And then the last thing is the logistical issues. So, for example, if your family wants to come and visit you, Portugal isn't always the cheapest country to travel to. And when they come here, the accommodation of like hotels and Airbnbs and stuff like that have skyrocketed for what it is. So sometimes you're really overpaying a lot for visitors to come here. Which makes it hard for your friends and family to come by and visit you. So that puts it back to that it relies even more on you to travel back. And then you might have an idea about that your family can come and enjoy the country with you, which just makes it a whole lot harder in reality once you really see the state of the airports and the plane tickets and stuff like that have just really skyrocketed because Portugal right now is so popular. And last time I read it, Lisbon airport is at capacity. They can't add any more planes. So they're looking into like building a second airport, but all of that was like 10-15 years process probably. So those are not any quick fixes there.
Just on logistics, things will run slower here. Dealing with CTT, which is Portugal's mail service, and dealing with customs, it just takes longer. For example, I had a Christmas card that was sent to me by one of my friends from back home, and it took 3 months to get here and arrive. And that's not the case in all cases. I've had things be very efficient, but you just have to have the patience for it. And
and again, that is a symptom of that. Before all these foreigners came in to Portugal, the mail office here wasn't used to that high volume of foreign mail. Then tens of thousands of foreigners drop into the country that all receive foreign mails and parcels. So they just they have to upscale things a lot, and even if it's done perfectly, they still need to have bigger buildings, more staff, more education on different countries and all of that, and Brexit on top with new rules. So there's just a bunch of different knock-on effects on that, which is again a temporary state. It might not be a problem in 2 years. It's just a problem now.
And things are being upgraded in Portugal. For example, the Home Office, which is Portugal's SEF that deal with immigration, they're being disbanded and their responsibilities are going to different areas. So Portugal are aware that things are at capacity, that the country is becoming more and more popular with foreigners, more people are coming here, and we're bursting at the seams. So it's a problem that the government are aware of, and they are trying to sort of create efficiencies and change the way things are done. Didn't they also recently change the rules for setting up a business? If you want to set up a business, it's now easier.
So they've just created, I think it's called Empresa na Hora, like a company in an hour. So you can go to a special desk in the local council, and they can set up a company in an hour if you have all the documents in a row, instead of waiting weeks or months. So they are working on that. But if we should just finish on the political outlook of Portugal, Portugal have removed the golden visa now, so that's no longer possible. It's still possible in the D7 and D2 visas. I'm not an expert in all of that, but everything else than the golden visa is still there. It's just the golden visa, which is a visa linked with property where you don't have to be a tax resident in Portugal, that have been removed. Everything else is still there. But they are changing in things. And also Portugal, if you ask for my humble opinion, didn't make the tax regime NHR on purpose. They made it out of a necessity to get more money into the country. So that can be risked. There's a risk that one day will say, okay, no more NHR.
Yeah.
So if you are considering Portugal and you are relying on the NHR, you need to move quickly, because I won't guarantee that it's there in 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
we don't know.
So there is a certain political tension on that, and there will be some debates on that,
Yeah.
and I don't think it will stay forever.
Yeah, so you really need to keep your eye on the ball with what's happening in the country politically, economically. Just keep your eye on the ball on that. We can't underestimate that, because that will obviously have a bearing on the plans that you're making here and the type of future that you could look to have in Portugal.
Yeah, and for example, I enjoy to read Publico.pt, which is one of our main newspapers that works well with Google Translate.
Yeah.
And there you can read a bit more about the politics in Portugal, and you can get a bit more insight into some of the tensions and different things that go on, so you can make a decision within that.
Yes. One of the sources of research that we found whilst preparing for this video is an article of the pros and cons of Portugal by Portugalist.com. We have no affiliation with this website, but we found the article quite interesting, so we'll link that in the description box. I think it's quite fair and balanced. There are lots of comments, but it's definitely worth checking out to understand, getting a more balanced view, let's say. More recently in the Facebook groups, I'm hearing more and more people saying, I hear all good things. What are the things I need to think about when I'm coming? What are the cons? So that will certainly help you a great deal. Thank you so much for watching this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe, like the video if you want more, and we will see you in the next one. Have a great day.
And if you're watching all of our other videos, as a bunch of you are, please like all those you like, because it helps us. It helps us to get further out on YouTube. It helps us for more people to see these videos, which is just free content for you to enjoy Portugal. But it also helps us to see which of the topics you like the most, so we can make better content.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we've got a busy family, we've got three young kids, we will obviously prioritize trying to make videos on topics that you want to see the most.
Absolutely.
But take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.
Ciao.